Hello and welcome to section 2 of unit 2, the effects of exercise on the body. Hopefully you gained some useful information from section 1 and this what we're going to cover today will link into it quite nicely.
So before we get into the effects of exercise, I think it's really important to discuss as a massage therapist why this particular topic is important to cover.
Definitely. So first of all, it's important to understand the changes that the body are going to go through when you do exercise. So you're going to get that information, which is really useful. Mm-hmm. This is then going to help you if you've got a new client that has just started training and maybe a little confused by things that are going on and what the adaptations and benefits are. So it puts you in a good position just to be able to explain that to them and hopefully encourage them to keep up their programme. Also, if you're going to get into rehab, again, it's really important to know what you're asking the body to do. So this information is good there. And if you do get into working with professional athletes, again, understanding why they're not just, say, swimmers swimming, but they're doing strength and conditioning and Pilates and that sort of thing. So all useful information.
Yeah, all links together really well to create a much bigger picture and much more in depth. So
Definitely.
That's really important. So when we get started with this, it's probably a good place to discuss what exercise actually is.
Yeah, probably a good start. So put simply, it is presenting the body with a stimulus that will cause the body to react or respond. So this could be anything from lifting weights, running, walking the dog. From this you can either maintain or improve your fitness.
Okay, so that sounds fairly simple, but what's the difference between the two?
Okay, so I'll give you an example here. So if you're going to maintain your fitness, you need to keep doing the same amount of exercise regularly.
Okay.
If you want to improve your fitness, you actually need to do more than your normal exercise levels. So, for example, if you walk the dog a mile up the hill every day, you're going to get to a certain level of fitness, and if you keep doing that, you're going to maintain that fitness.
Yeah.
But then if you decide to walk them for a mile and a half at a slightly faster pace, you're going to improve your fitness. So that's the difference.
Okay, so it's just building up. So a bit like with us as massage therapists, people often ask us if we get fit while we massage. But of course, after a point, at some point, we're not going to, if we're only always doing 6 massages a day, we're not going to get any better. But I guess we're either then going to have to increase the number that we do, the number of days we work, but probably not the speed at which we work.
No, definitely not. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. So what is the basic impact of doing regular exercise?
Okay, so when you exercise, your body experiences short-term changes. If you continue to do the exercise, the body will adapt. So these become long-term changes, and they'll continue to deal better with the demand over a longer period.
Fab. So does that mean all exercise creates the same long-term and short-term adaptations?
Definitely not. So there will be a degree of overlap, but some type of exercises will create better adaptations in different systems. So for example, muscular strength will be different to your cardiovascular and respiratory system exercises. But to get quicker adaptations, cardiovascular-based exercise have a greater impact with exercise such as running. But hypertrophy weight training is the only form of exercise that will increase muscle size effectively. So there's quite a big difference.
There is, isn't there? Okay, so long-term adaptations come with time as you repeatedly do the same things, but short-term changes or adaptations are immediate. So what are these?
Okay, so short-term effects are an immediate response to exercise. So when there's a sudden demand on the body from exercise or a request to do anything more than normal activity, the body will stoke up various systems like circulation, increase the heart rate, push more blood around the body, provide more oxygen and nutrients to the tissues to deal with the increased demand. So that's just a few ideas. As we've already mentioned, if you regularly push the body, the short-term changes will become long-term adaptations, so the body can cope better with the requests on it.
Great, so these adaptations will take place in all sorts of systems and will be both long and short-term adaptations. So this includes your cardiovascular system, your respiratory system, the muscular system, skeletal system and even the nervous system. So all your main sort of systems are impacted and improved.
As well as what we've talked about, there's loads of additional information in the manual on the different types of adaptations the body makes, both long and short-term, which system is relevant to, and the form of training which causes these adaptations. We will discuss through a few of them though, so as well as a little bit of other additional information.
Okay, so let's start by thinking about the trained person and the untrained person. So if somebody is considered as trained, they're going to be able to better cope with the short-term demands on the body because of the long-term adaptations. But if somebody's new to exercise, they're really going to struggle with these short-term strains on the body. But if they keep at it, the long-term adaptations will take place and these short-term demands will be so much easier to deal with.
So whatever your stage of training, you're going to experience short-term effects of exercise. However, if you're fit and the system's already adapted, they're not going to feel so hard. Unfit, then the body won't be able to cope so well and will be placed under stress. Now, when stressed, these short-term effects can initiate longer-term adaptations. Often this will involve working above the anaerobic threshold, so respiring without oxygen, which can only last for a short time. This is known as the O2 debt or oxygen debt. If a person keeps this up, the body will start to go through the long-term adaptations. The outcome of this is that exercise becomes easier.
Does it ever? Okay, so your long-term adaptations, there's quite a few physiological changes taking place in the body, and this is to the heart, the lungs, the blood vessels and the muscles. This includes the heart getting larger, increased stroke volume and decreased working heart rate. So that's better for your heart because it's not so stressed. For the lungs, increased functional capacity, improved gases exchanges and increased VO2 max. For blood vessels, this is increased vessel size, which reduces the resting heart rate and gives increased blood volume within the vessels. Muscle adaptations include increased capillaries, which allows more blood to the muscles, more mitochondria and better enzyme function within the cells. As you can see from the chart in your manual, there are many more adaptations that take place. Have a good read through.
So the next short-term effect we're going to look at of aerobics exercise is the effect on blood pressure. So typically there's going to be an immediate increase in blood pressure as you start to exercise. Now that isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it does mean that perhaps for somebody with high blood pressure, they're going to have to take it steady, warm up well, allow the body to get used to it. But it is not an excuse not to exercise, although someone with really high hypertension probably should be doing so in conjunction with their GP.
Definitely.
Ultimately, though, exercise will lower blood pressure long term, so it's a long-term adaptation. So normally the diastolic blood pressure will remain unchanged, while the systolic pressure will increase. The higher the intensity of the exercise, the greater the increase in blood pressure. Heavy weight training may increase both the systolic and diastolic blood pressure. But over long term, ultimately, as I said, both are liable to a decrease.
Okay, so one side effect of short-term increases within the heart rate and the blood pressure is something called blood pooling. And when you deliver an exercise program, it's actually something you've got to be aware of. So when you're exercising, your heart is pumping the blood around your body at a rate of knots. And as you remember from your cardiovascular system lectures, once deoxygenated blood starts coming back around the body, the heart hasn't much to do with getting it back up. So the muscles contract and push the blood back up the body. But if you suddenly stop exercising, those muscles stop working, so you lose your pumping action, which takes the blood back to the heart. And what happens is it sits in your boots. So what you're supposed to do when you stop exercising is not stop and walk away. It's actually supposed to do a proper cool down, which allows the heart rate to drop so that the blood isn't being pumped around the body so fast, so that all the systems are back in line with each other. So if somebody does stop exercising and walks away without doing a proper cool down, what can happen is they can feel dizzy, nauseous, they can actually faint. Anything else you can think of, Charlotte, there?
No, I think that sort of pretty well covers it up. It's really important, especially if you're doing post-event treatments, to be able to recognise these sort of symptoms. Then send someone off, do a proper cool down, tell them to take their time. And if someone does feel faint, lie them down, feet in the air. Best thing you can do in those sort of situations.
Good advice there, Charlotte.
So apart from that, so let's move on and look at bones and joints in the short term. So as you move, joints produce synovial fluid. That has a lubricating effect on the joint. So that means that you get freer movement, much smooth movement, but it also protects the joints from more wear and tear. Muscles and ligaments will also warm up, and that will increase your joint range. So typically your movement at the end of a session is going to be better than at the beginning.
So that would be your short term, but in the long term, what will happen then is that synovial fluid production actually becomes better and more efficient, so that your joint stays more mobile more of the time. But also you get better stability of the joint because you've got stronger muscles around the joints, and also you've got more flexibility in the ligaments, the muscles and the tendons, so you have better range of movement at the same time.
So as well as this, it's really important for the muscular system and the bones to have weight-bearing exercise. So these might be lifting weights, but also walking, standing, running. Muscles and joints are there to support the body's weight. So if they're not exerted to that, they're not going to adapt to it, they're not going to become stronger. So any exercise where something else is supporting the body's weight, such as swimming and cycling, we describe as non-weight bearing exercise.
So just to poke in there, one of the benefits of weight-bearing exercise is it actually makes the bones stronger over time. So you're less likely to suffer with things like osteoporosis in the future, because when you're younger, you've built that strength in the bones.
Yeah, so this is really important. There's some lovely research that looks at the rate of decline in bone density. Now, it is inevitable. Bone density will start to decrease, probably from around the age of 30.
Oh.
However, you can slow the rate of decline, and that's what's really important. So any form of weight-bearing activity, walking, lifting weights, running, is going to actually improve your bone density and therefore slow the rate of decline. So by the time you get to later in life, to your older years, you're less likely to suffer from conditions such as osteoporosis, Tamsin said.
Okay, so another adaptation with muscles is that when you do anything, the muscle needs fuel, but when you exercise, you need more fuel. So if you're a trained person, your body can respond to this very well and give you all the fuel that your body demands. But if you're an untrained person, you're going to fatigue much quicker because your body just can't keep up with those demands. But again, like I said, you will adapt.
Now, something you're going to experience in the short term when you exercise associated with the muscular system is a condition called DOMS, or delayed onset muscle soreness. Now, you will see this a lot as a massage therapist. People might think they've got injuries, they might think they've torn something. Basically, it is pain that is initiated and felt in the muscle about 24 to 72 hours after exercise. So for a couple of days afterwards, you're going to be sore. Now, the cause is unknown clinically. Now, in the past, it has been sort of discussed that it's because there's too much lactic acid in the muscle. This is not the case. Lactic acid dissociates almost immediately within the muscle to a compound called lactate. And lactate is actually a fuel used in anaerobic respiration. So don't be lulled into that one. The current thinking about the cause of DOMS is micro damage in your muscles. So every time you exercise, you create small micro tears. Now that might be one fibre, it might be two fibres of thousands. Now what happens then, as we've discussed in Unit 3, is you have an inflammatory response. The muscle has to heal. So as that inflammatory response is sent out, that could create pain. As it heals, it's going to be painful. That's fairly inevitable. But because it's small, after a couple of days, normally you'll feel much better, but that is the body adapting to the short-term exercise to make you stronger long-term.
So just to point out, normally when you take on new exercises, this is when you're going to feel it most. And I deal with a few bodybuilders that get really upset when they don't feel DOMS. A good warm-up and cool-down can help minimise DOMS, but if you're doing something new, you're generally going to feel it, aren't you?
Certainly are. So longer term adaptations as well, we're looking at with weight bearing exercise. There's going to be a change in muscle strength, density, structure, and potentially muscle type. We're looking at type 2 fibres depending on the training carried out, and that will be what sort of Tamsin's sort of pointing out with their clients. They want to see those improvements, and therefore they're hoping that by experiencing DOMS they're going to get there quicker.
There are many long-term changes or adaptations in the muscles, and as you can see from the chart in the manual, it's huge. But it includes things like hypertrophy of the type 2 muscle fibres, so this is them getting bigger and stronger, increased number of contractile proteins, so that's your actin and myosin, improved neuromuscular connections, so that's the speed the messages get through at, and improved posture. The list is long, but have a good read through, it's quite interesting.
So the final topic that we're going to look at in terms of short and long-term effects of exercise is flexibility training. Now, in the short term, you're going to temporarily increase muscle length, giving you a better range of movement while you're exercising.
Okay, but again, the long-term gain from this is that you'll have a permanent increase in muscle length and improved joint range of movement. So this is going to reduce the risk of injuries to mainly back, but also other joints as well.
Within all of this, it is really important to abide by the principle, use it or lose it. Now, as we sort of discussed all the way through, if you're not pushing your body, if you're not exercising above your normal daily activity, then you're not stressing the muscles, you're not stressing the cardiovascular system, the strength, your bones. Now, as a result, if you're not stressing it, your body is only going to adapt to the stresses that it's under. So if you're not using it, you're likely to experience a decline. So if you're no longer running 10 miles, you're only running 5, you're not going to be able to then go out and do a 10 miler.
Who would want to? The other place is really important to remember, and I'm nagging my parents about it a lot at the moment, is that as you get older, if you stop using your ability to do things, it will decline very quickly. For example, if somebody goes into hospital and spend weeks and weeks in bed, when they come out, they generally have lost their ability to do certain things. And with older people, it's things like getting up out of a chair. They use their arms to push themselves out rather than their legs. They start to lose lower body strength much more quicker than upper body strength. This then progresses to the fact that they move on to a stair lift to get up and down the stairs rather than walking up and down the stairs. Then they can't walk up and down the stairs because they've not done it. So this is a really key thing with older clients to keep in their mind, that the longer they use something, the longer they're going to get to keep it.
Yeah, it's really, really relevant actually. So to so many people that we see through the doors of the treatment room. So do have it in mind when you're working with someone.
Yeah, definitely.
So it sits alongside that there are basically, what we've summed up I think today is that there are many reasons to exercise. Now that could be part of a healthy lifestyle, to improve your sort of physical health, your physiological health, to increase your sort of long-term ability to move and to enjoy your daily activities, but also to improve the ease of those activities, so that the fitter, the healthier, the more you exercise, the easier the daily tasks are going to be that tying your shoelace, walking or running up the stairs, or going for a jog to the bus stop when you've missed your bus.
I think Charlotte's got that down in a nutshell. One other thing to consider is exercise addiction. So we're not going to cover this too heavily, but it is something that does come up. And I think we've talked about it in other places before, haven't we, with clients?
Yeah, we have.
We've tried to convince that they're doing too much. But there are some obvious signs. So actually that they find the exercise is actually getting harder to do because their body's fatigued. Yeah. They tend to be moody, temperamental, emotional, that sort of thing. So they're all key kind of points. They're likely to get ill more often as well.
Can be difficult to spot, but do keep your eyes open. So everything Tamsin said, but also sort of like their dependency on exercise. Have they had a bad day because they didn't get the full session or weren't able to perform the session? So we all have a day where the jog that we normally do feels more difficult. So, but it's the long-term and ongoing effects that are really relevant to look at. So keep that in mind when you're working with someone.
And it might not be something you're able to deal with, but it's just something you need to be aware of. And if it becomes part of a larger problem, you may need to refer them on to somebody else.
Yeah, absolutely. Really important to spot that there.
Okay.
So I think that sums up our section 2 of Unit 2.
Definitely.
So now you can complete the tasks, there's a little activity to do, and then as always then move on to Unit 2, Section 3.
Speak to you soon. Bye.